Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome to my brain. Welcome to my frequency. Enter at your own risk. As always, I appreciate all the support. And as you guys know, I have people that I am close to, fascinated by, and inspired by. And today is no different. Um, Joining me on the podcast today is Renee Nicole Allen. She is part of the faculty at St. John's University School of Law. Hello, Renee. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Baxter? Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you here.
Man, this is like, I always feel like these are conversations I would be having anyway. And people are so interested in doing like such amazing things. It's like, why not sharing with the world? So thank you for taking some time.
Oh, well, I'm honored. Thank you. I'm interesting. So that's already, we're on a good start.
See, I think you're interested, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So, your path it has been law. I'd like to start with just kind of asking you about sort of what led you down the path to studying law, and people that maybe influenced you at the beginning, or how old were you when you decided this was like something that you wanted to do?
So there's a funny story there, and I actually told this to one of my college classmates who had no idea that she was the reason I went to law school a couple years ago. I grew up first wanting to be an astronaut, and then wanting to be a doctor, and pretty much until my junior year in college, I thought I was going to be a doctor. And that whole college level organic chemistry just didn't quite sit right with me. And so I was at this kind of place where I needed to make a decision about what I was going to do next. And I was an English major. I'd already made that decision. I was sitting in one of my English classes, African American Lit classes, and one of my classmates was filling out her LSAC application. At the time, still something you did on paper. And she was filling out her paper application. I was like, oh, what's that? What are you doing? And she's like, it's law school. I'm applying to law school. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, what prerequisites do you need to go to law school? And she's like, you don't need any. And I was just like, I'm going to law school. That was it. I decided that day. Like, I was like, oh, you don't need any prerequisites. They actually prefer, one of the things that they were saying at the time is that they preferred like someone who had strong reading and writing backgrounds. And so as an English lit major, I've written a ton of papers, done a lot of research. And so I was like, maybe this is good for me. And people who know me know that this was a great fit for me. Even though it was not a career that I sought out. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. And so, but I'm always right. I am, I think people would describe me as argumentative or adversarial.
Yeah.
I like to have a good debate. And so that's how I ended up in law school.
What was it though? Like what was the like besides like the prereq was pretty much a clean slate? Like what was it about law that you said? Was it the debate piece?
I think it was the challenge. So if I'm totally honest, I had not been in situations in, K through 12 and even early college where I really felt like I was challenged academically. I was in the top of my class, I got A's, but I didn't feel like I worked really hard for them. It was something that came naturally to me. And it's not a flex, it's just true. And so, one of the things I consistently heard about law school is that it was tough. And I didn't at that point really want to be a lawyer, but I knew that going to law school would open a number of doors, and I knew that it would be academically challenging. And I really wanted to challenge myself. And I wanted to, not that I was grade focused, but I wanted to get grades that I felt like I actually worked hard for. And I really had not had that experience before going to law school. So
Wow.
So that was the real draw for me.
Was just a challenge of
it was the challenge
of it. That's pretty admirable.
I took on a lot of debt to be challenged. I'm sure there were other things I could have done. Uh,
Well, you paid for, and you know what? The the question is, was it more challenging? Did you find it as challenging as you hoped for?
it was definitely challenging. It was a different way of learning. Um, it was being in a room with people who, because of the way they were selected, were, I hate to use the word equal, but we were all coming into it, I guess, on the same page. And so the environment was challenging. And I think coming into law school as a first generation law student was unconnected from the profession, not
Mm.
knowing anything about what to expect. That in itself presented its own challenges. So yes, it was a yes.
Well, yeah. Aside from the academic challenges, right? It's just this, you know, entering in this world that you mentioned.
Right.
It's a white male dominated, uh, industry, like most industries in America. What were some of those types of challenges and some of your experiences navigating it, as you started law school, and even today, as you are, part of the faculty at St. John's?
So I think, law schools have, I'll say, I started law school in 2006. My law school, University of Florida, shout out, Levin College of Law. My law school in particular, the one I graduated from, has come a long way in increasing the diversity and of the law school classroom. I was in a law school section, so we take our classes in the first year in sections. There
Okay.
were 4 sections. In my law school section had about 100 people, and there were 4 Black people there.
Mm.
And so and we now kind of changed it. The tide has changed in that more women are going to law school than men. So law school classes are now more female dominated. But and we've increased the diversity some, but there were some challenges there for sure. Because I never wanted to be in a classroom feeling like I was speaking for all Black people, but there was only 3 other Black people in the room. So I was also very conscious of every time I spoke that people might perceive me to be speaking for all Black people, right? So it was kind of this balancing act that I started doing as a student and have continued to do, in the profession, and even somewhat still as a faculty member, though, I think I am in a place where I'm focused on authenticity and really bringing my authentic self to the classroom. But there are challenges there. I practiced law for a couple years in Metro Atlanta, some very rural counties outside of Atlanta. And I still remember going to court, having on my suit, having my files in my hand, dressed the whole part, and standing in line outside of the courthouse in the line so there's a separate line for attorneys, and standing in the attorney's line and having the sheriff walk up to me and say, "Hey, this line is for attorneys." And I'm like, yeah, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But it was just this assumption, just from looking at me, not even know me from, anyone, just looking at me decided that I didn't belong there. So I've been really on this professionally, on this, challenging what it is we think a lawyer, what does a lawyer look like, right? Even, not just what their race or their gender, but what they wear, how much emphasis we put on professionalism by proxy of appearance, right? Like that
Mm.
appearance is some kind of proxy for professionalism, and it's not. You can wear a suit and be very ethical and very unprofessional. So I've thought a lot about that. I've talked a lot about that, and I want to, in the capacity I am in now, challenge really what we think about what a professional looks like, what a lawyer looks like.
Yeah, I have a friend who is a practicing attorney, a black woman, and we were talking about a month or so ago about everything's been virtual now, and so she still throws on her sports coat, and she's still dressed, at least waist up, right, as you would expect a professional, quote unquote, to dress. And she's talked about some of the folks that don't feel that pressure and how they kind of show up as attorneys, and it baffles her, because there's still that sort of double standard when it comes to that. And then I think that professional Black people, I'll speak for myself, and maybe you feel the same way, Renee. I don't feel like I can get away with certain attire, even in a Zoom call, even when I'm meeting with my colleagues. If I'm on camera with them, I have a collar on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I agree. I think there is, I'm conscious of that, and I think being at home and teaching on WebEx, I think I felt a lot more relaxed, and I think maybe my students have appreciated that. But there's still, I understand the boundaries of even me being in a more relaxed space.
Yeah.
And that, for the most part, it's still business from the waist up, and who knows what's going on elsewhere, but
it's not there. No, there's nobody's business.
Right. But yeah, I don't think that, I just don't think that that I have the luxury of showing up and not at least looking the part, whatever that stereotypical part is.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I write about this, I think Black women, unfortunately, are presumed to be incompetent. And so when I show up, the presumption is I'm not qualified, competent, capable. And I have to do the work then to demonstrate that I am. I don't just get that presumption, because of my education or because of my job title, that I actually have to work to build some of that credibility. And part of that, I acknowledge, starts with my appearance. Whether I like it or not, that's just the world we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you talked about like these virtual courses that you're teaching. Is that, and you also mentioned like this, your authentic self, and you relax in some of your dress. Has it, had you started to feel some of that and were you starting to turn that corner prior to COVID, or like, explain that process as far as you being more comfortable and throwing a sweatshirt on. We've talked off air about your hair, and how it's not conscious, but also you're not worrying about if today you have braids and next week in class you may have a different hairstyle, right? I mean, there's a lot of confidence that has to come with those decisions, because unfortunately you're just more cognizant about it than because of what is around, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely I think a certain level of awareness, that there's a lot of things that I think we as Black women think through, that people who aren't Black women have no idea of what we're constantly having to think about as we think about how we appear in the world, particularly in professional spaces. And my students, my first year writing students, are working on a Crown Act problem this semester. And very unintentionally, as I have kind of evolved with my natural hair, I've worn, a wig, braids, natural curly hair. I mean, I've had every natural hairstyle that, could come up, and it hasn't been intentional. It's a part of my own growth as an individual, and me kind of just exploring my natural hair. But my students are working through a Crown Act problem. And so they're getting from week to week something different, and no one's remarked about it. They're professional. I don't expect that they do. But I guess as my teaching is evolving, I also am evolving as an individual, and I feel more confident and comfortable bringing some of these issues that are very important to me as a Black woman into the classroom. And I also feel more confident and comfortable in bringing my authentic self and my natural hair in whatever version it is on that day to the classroom. And I will say that part of that comfort came last year with the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the social unrest in this country and around the world, I felt like we were really ready as a law school community to
Mm,
start having real conversations. And I
mm,
think the beginning of those real conversations is that all of us got to bring some authenticity to the table.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and uh, salute to you for stepping in that, because I'm sure it's, you know, uncomfortable at times, but we've had the conversation in different circles around this whole, like, well, I don't see color comment, right? And even if it's initially, if it was meant to be sort of a peace offering, or a, hey, look at me, I'm not racist or anything like that, it's really dismissive, right? And we don't want to get into that today, but I think that you bringing yourself, and other faculty and students bringing themselves, opens up those conversations, right? I mean, I have a friend who's a professor, very young face, right? Similar to you. And she's like, she's doing the opposite of what you're doing. She feels, she's buttoned up. And when she's on, she just got this new job at this new university during COVID. They haven't even seen her yet, like, in person. And so she's like buttoned up, because she's like, I already look young. I'm this Black woman. Like, I want to make sure that they kind of know who I am. And I think that both of those approaches still, again, provide the entire picture, or more of the picture, of what we are as
Yeah.
people, first and foremost, with different
Yeah.
sides of us. There is no perfect box that any of us should fit in, right?
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
still, even in this space. So like this is my 10th year. I'm actually wrapping up year 10 of teaching. I mean, if you think my face looks young now, imagine, 10 years ago, I was walking in there and they were like, who is this, baby in here saying she's
Yeah.
teaching us something?
Yeah.
And I did feel like, because of my age, because of my race, because of my gender, that I had to overcompensate a little bit.
Mm,
And so I was very conscious of, my approach then. I think now I'm doing, even though I'm taking some of these steps to bring my most authentic self into the workplace, I'm still conscious of, some of the cues I give out. So I'm always, when I introduce myself to a class for the first time, for example,
yeah.
I always mention, this is my X year teaching, right? So don't let this young face fool you.
That's
I'm
right.
not new. I'm not new to this. So there's still things that I'm doing. For me, saying, "Oh, this is my 10th year of teaching," is my collar shirt. Basically,
For
I've just
sure.
gotten a new shirt with a collar
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's still me doing the same things, right? It's still that same kind of work. It's building credibility.
Hmm.
Um, that unfortunately has to happen for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Congratulations on approaching your 10th year. That's
Thank you.
kind of crazy.
Thank you. Very.
Um, so we talked about you sort of navigating and some of the pressure that you may feel in your role as faculty. Is there something, do you have a mission that you're trying to accomplish? Is there something that, you're uh, destroying stereotypes probably daily because of being a Black woman in this profession, at this prestigious school? But are you conscious of it, and are there more specific things that you are trying to accomplish while you teach, just in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I definitely, for me, it is important for um, students, all students, to see someone who is different from, the law is a very white male dominated profession. Only 5% of lawyers are Black.
Wow.
And so, for me, it is important that my students see something that's different from that, right? And not only, and I share these things because I think people need to hear them. So not only am I a Black woman, I am also a first generation lawyer. I was also raised by a single parent. I also have 6-figure student loan debt. I also grew up, working poor. I mean, I didn't know we didn't have any money, but we didn't have any money. Yeah. So, I mean, these are all things that, I think it's important that our students see that there's value in all of these different life experiences to the profession as a whole. And so when we encounter people with these different life experiences, we get different points of view. And that then just makes our profession so much more better. And so for me, it's important to shed some of these things, to share some of these things, so that I hate using the word diversity. And I think I was going to try and get through this whole thing without ever using the word, but so that people can see these diverse experiences and how they really enrich our interactions and ultimately enrich our profession.
I want to come back to this diversity thing, but before, and I may sound very naive, so forgive me. When we talk about law, the last time we spoke, we talked about a book that I was reading that you've read probably. I don't know how many. We didn't talk about it in detail, but The New Jim Crow. And a friend of mine had mentioned it to a judge, friend of his, and the judge didn't know that the book existed. A white judge, he didn't know that the book existed, but he said, yes, of course, like it made so much sense because he, as a judge, has been at this position to sort of see how some of these laws and things have sort of played out. Here comes my potentially naive question, Renee. Because you are helping to teach and groom and influence this new wave of attorneys, do you feel like it's important because you look different than 95% of them? Like, do you think it's important for them to see you? And do you think that it will help sort of change maybe some preconceived stereotypes or anything that they may have as they go out into the world?
So I hope so, right? Like that's the hope, right? I think that I did a talk recently and I talked about the difference between or what diversity can do, right? So there's diversity in numbers. And I think diversity in numbers, does help with what you just said, that they do get to see if you are entering this space with some stereotypical view of what Black women are like, or Black people are like, or any X people, right? Any kind of anything. Then, hopefully by encountering me, you've gotten that perspective challenged. And then you take that challenge and you move on and maybe you start to see the world in a different way, right? That's diversity in numbers. And I think that is a part of what diversity in numbers does. Structural diversity, however, is a whole nother conversation. I don't think my presence alone is doing anything for that. But I think how we get to making changes on the structural side of things is we do need voices. And so we need a seat at the table. We need people who look like me and you to have a voice and to say, no, it's not always that way, actually. Sometimes, even though this is what the law looks like on the paper, how the laws are executed actually look different. And they might look different depending on what you look like. And so being in the room, you have to be in the room really to have that conversation. And so I don't want to minimize the importance of diversity in numbers. It matters that I'm where I am. But I also don't want to leave that as the only check box, right? Like that is not the end all be all of the change that we want to see, not just in the legal profession, but in this country, period.
Sure. And it's also important for them to know that you're not the only person that looks like you that's doing these professional things, right? That whole, exception to the rule thing
Right.
is another stereotype,
Right.
because folks will start to say, oh, Renee, no, Renee's not like, she's different, she's special.
Right.
And although part of that may be true, you
Right.
are, but not
Very
in
true.
that,
No, but I
not,
hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Like there's this Black exceptionalism is something that, I'm conscious of, and that they're all different kinds of Black, and all, there's no one way to be Black, right? I don't want
right.
anyone to hear this conversation and leave thinking that, I support that notion. They're there, but I hope that's just the start of an exploration, right? Like if
Yeah.
you as opposed to taking on this kind of Black exceptionalism approach. Right?
Yeah. And as we all, I mean, I can't say as we all know, because clearly we don't all know it, but you'd be surprised if you started to think about the number of things that you had in common with people would outweigh, I mean, like 95-5, right? To the small differences that we have. There are things that just are important to people, right? Safety, family,
Food.
food. Yes, we will get to that. These common things. We want the best for our children and for the young people in our family, nieces, nephews, the whole thing. And then there's this small, oh yeah, I'm Black, you're white. I'm from here, you're from there. My religion, it's just a small percentage, and we, for whatever reason, we spend so much time on these differences and not spend as much time celebrating the things that we have in common and learning from one another. So you have a few things going on, a couple of new things. Man, I don't know where to start. I'd like to hear about a bit about this article that you are sort of in the process of finishing. I know you sent me a couple of sort of high level things that you're trying to cover, but can you speak to this article that will be published relatively soon, and kind of what it entails?
Yeah, so the article is titled From Academic Freedom to Cancel Culture, Silencing Black Women in the Legal Academy. It's going to be published by the UCLA Law Review this summer. It should be out in June. I'm really excited about the opportunity to have my work in this forthcoming volume. And ultimately, the article kind of picks up on a 30 plus year line of Black women law professors writing about their experiences in the legal academy. And it really, for me, last summer, sitting in my Brooklyn apartment alone, because we were at the height of the pandemic and New York City was an epicenter, along with, the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, really thinking about how I wanted to have my voice heard as a legal scholar, and what was important to me to say, and that was it was feeling unheard. It was, me starting to do some research and discovering that in 1990, a group of Black women law professors had gotten together and kind of formed this collective and had started writing about their experiences, and their experiences 30 years later were mine. And I had the same exact things to say. The things that they raised were the things that I'm still talking about today. It's the things that I talk about in the article. And really feeling like maybe the legal academy is at a turning point, that if we're able to have these honest conversations about anti-racism in the legal profession and in the law and in the world broadly, that we first got to have conversations about how we aren't anti-racist as institutions, and how structurally our policies, our practices, and our traditions, our unspoken rules, have operated really to silence Black women in this space. And so that's what the article's about in a nutshell. It is this, we see these instances where students mostly are leading the charge to call out and to, quote unquote, cancel law professors who have engaged in acts of blatant racism. And these professors have gone essentially unpunished because of the protections they have through tenure and academic freedom. And so for me as a Black woman, as I watch this play out, how is it that I then get the Academy to acknowledge the very subtle experiences that I have with systemic gendered racism if we can't even do anything about these very blatant, obvious racist occurrences? And so the paper starts there, and it kind of works through all of the ways systemic gendered racism really causes Black women to be silent, and puts us in a position where we know that if we're going to be successful in this realm, we've got to negotiate our identity in a way that causes us to have to conform. So the norms exist in white spaces. Law schools are very much white spaces. And it's our job then to enter this space and conform to the norm.
And if you don't conform,
then you don't work out here. It's not an option. You have to conform. I mean, that is the path to, and I guess that's what's problematic. But the path to success, the path to tenure, is that you conform to these norms, or you don't, and so you probably aren't successful in accomplishing that goal.
There's a term that you used, intersectional battle fatigue. Can you elaborate on that and talk about how you cover that in the article, but just in general, sort of what that, kind of define that for me?
So intersectional battle fatigue occurs when anyone who lives at the intersection. So for me in this paper, I'm specifically talking about the intersection of race and gender for Black women, and that we really can't separate or distinguish these two experiences, that the experiences are compounded by both race and gender. And that specifically when you are in a white space where you have to navigate your identity in order to be successful and thrive, that there are health consequences associated with that. And so the intersectional battle fatigue really describes ultimately the health consequences that Black women experience from having to negotiate their identities to be successful in white spaces. And that's not just in legal academia, that's in corporate America, that's everywhere. So that, I mean, that's stress, anxiety, long-term, very serious cardiovascular issues, PTSD from particular incidents with systemic gendered racism. I mean, the list goes on. But it really, there are some very serious negative health consequences to having to negotiate your identity in a way that causes you to have to conform all the time.
Yeah, I mean, conforming your identity, that's at the core, that's a very stressful proposition to start without even going into the details of it. It's like, okay, why do I have to negotiate? And, but if I want to, and here's the question that there's a couple different schools of thought. It's like, okay, do we buck the system? Do we reject the system? Do we call the system out? Whether it be legal academia, corporate America, or just politics, or just, society as a whole, right? Or do we somehow try to manage to conform enough to sort of change it from the inside out?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this concept of a critical mass. And people write about it like it's magic. But I don't think that just looking at the last 30 years and in our efforts to diversify law school faculties with women of color and people of color, if we're waiting on a critical mass to change things from the inside, we're going to be waiting a long time at this rate. I'll be retired, and we might not reach the critical mass at that point. And so, I think it really is calling upon the people in positions of power and privilege either because they have academic freedom because they've earned tenure, or because they are white men, that really it is impressing upon those people to use their own status in the legal academy to make the changes, the structural changes that we'll need. Because we really can't rely on critical mass. I mean, we won't at this rate. I mean, unless something changes,
Yeah.
critical mass is not going to get us where we need to be. I can't change anything from the inside. There are two Black women including me, on my faculty.
Yeah. Explain that concept quickly, like the critical mass.
Critical mass. So it's just it is no certain number, but it's enough of whatever the group is present on I'll just say a law school faculty, to start making that change from the inside, to feel empowered to have a voice.
Now, the people that are calling these systems out, for lack of a better term, do those people need to come? So we need the folks that are benefiting the most to start to rework and bring awareness. But who make those appeals to those people to start the conversation? Does that come from the inside, or does
I mean, that comes from the inside, and I don't even know that. I think it's an awareness, right? So in having these conversations with some of my white male colleagues at, my current institution and friends at others, that if I wasn't there to share these experiences, then I wouldn't be able to raise the awareness so that these people could then use their privilege and positions of power to start driving some change.
Yeah.
And so, even if there's just one of me, there's a benefit of me speaking up and sharing these experiences. It is that in itself is a part of that movement towards change. But I think what we sometimes have a tendency to do, and I'm thinking about Pamela Newkirk's Diversity Inc. I don't know if you're familiar with the text, but diversity is a $1 billion business in this country.
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes are so laser focused on the numbers being the results that we miss the mark. It's not, we can have 12 of me on my faculty. If we're not moving towards those structural things, if there are 12 me's on the faculty and we aren't in positions of power to make any change, then we're still not getting anywhere, right?
Yeah.
We're just doing the same things over and over, but with more people that look like me. And that's not the result we should want either.
Right. Wow. I don't even want to go into where I want to go right now. That's another conversation, but the business of diversity, it's very interesting, right? And then you have these people that have been put in these newly created positions, these diversity and inclusion officers, managers, etc. And although the people that have been put in place, they may mean well, if they're not truly empowered by the leadership at these organizations, it's just a PR move.
Yep.
If they don't really make intentional, changes or go about, looking for things to implement and empowering these people, right? It's a
we
lot.
could have a whole talk for an hour just on that.
Oh my gosh. And I would just love to hear, your thoughts about that whole piece, because I'm in a role where my group at Capnick, we have a diversity and inclusion team that we're doing some of the initial conversations for our clients, just really trying to bring about sort of awareness as far as where there may be some areas for improvement for organizations, but we aren't trying to be the experts, but we're trying to start the conversation. And I think that although it's a great initial step, I'm afraid that some folks may stop there and say that they've done something, right? And that's the piece that kind of that a cynic can spend a lot of time kind of dismissing, right, and not feeling like there's anything that's going to change from it. So yeah, another conversation for another day.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how we get to, if some of these positions, in the language of today, if some of these positions become anti-racism officers, like,
Mm,
because for me, um, on principle, that's really the work, right? That
yes,
includes that would include also diversifying, and that would include equity and inclusion.
absolutely.
But it's a lot. It actually gets to looking at the policies,
Yes,
and how structurally institutions are still perpetuating racism, even when it looks really good from the outside. And so,
that's really good. Yeah.
I wonder if we're going to have anti-racist officers and directors, in
Mm,
the near future, because um, I think that really gets to the heart of tackling the structure.
that's
And
so good. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't see anybody, naming an anti-racist officer. I'm maybe kind of dreaming out
No,
loud or
no, no.
thinking
I think
out
you may
loud at
be
the
on
moment.
to something. I
Okay,
think you
well,
may be on to
I mean, if
something.
I am onto something, y'all heard it here first.
That's right.
It was
That's right.
me.
Because ultimately that's the work that needs to be done. And oh, guys, like I said, there's just so many,
Yeah,
like it's such a can of worms. But you're right. We want to check a box, or do we want to make some real change? And we need to each organization, in my opinion, needs to just kind of define where they are today, and then try to determine, or then they need to determine what they're trying to accomplish. And if it's not an anti, whether they call it this or not, if it's not an anti-racism agenda, then they're already off the mark.
correct.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's
Okay.
move on.
Because we could,
Uh
we're gonna
oh
go.
gosh, yeah. And I really want to pick your brain about that, but another time.
Okay.
Um Another thing that you have going on, as if you don't have enough, you are teaching a new course in the fall, right? That you are sort of creating.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm working on it. It's been officially approved, so it will definitely be offered in the fall. But the course is called "The Music and the Movement: Race, Rhythm, and Social Justice."
Mm,
And it starts with lynching and Billie Holiday's "Strange Fruit." And it ends with a look at the Black Lives Matter movement and J. Cole's "Be Free."
mm,
And it takes a progressive look at, I think, 7 different movements. So lynching, the Great Migration, the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power movement. And it looks at the law and the evolution of the law from the perspective of the music that came out of these movements.
why music?
Oh, music is my thing. I'm a
Yeah,
very much I mean, I almost can't do anything in silence. And so music has always been at the background of anything, whether I'm reading, cooking, anything. There's always
yeah,
music. And I can actually look at, I think what made me think about this course in this way is because I can think about certain periods of my life and I automatically go to the music that
yeah,
defined that period of my life. And
yeah,
so I thought it would be cool for students. We don't have a lot of opportunities for creativity in law school. So I thought it would be really cool for students to have some creative outlet. And for those folks who are musically inclined like me, to really take a look at how music affected these different movements and ultimately changed the law.
yeah. I mean, we hip hop got a lot of credit, right? Rightly so, about sort of being a reflection of what was going on. But it started way before hip
Yeah.
hop, right?
Yeah. Music is
Uh,
the mirror to what's going on in society. It really is.
yeah, yeah, and being able to really, document and capture those moments, aside even video footage of certain things doesn't tell the whole story,
Yeah.
right? So you need all these different pieces to complete it, but the music of the times, along with the footage, along with the stories, um, it really adds a ton of important context to what was going on. And I mean, I'm a music fan too. And so like I just think it's brilliant, and it makes so much sense because you can listen if you don't know anything. Once they go through the course, they listen to the music. Two things I think, if nothing else, and I'm biased, but two things I think that will happen regardless is um, an appreciation for the art that maybe they didn't have for before, right? You know, learning about an artist that they may not have ever, you know, Nina Simone, you know,
I don't
who,
know if they even know. I may be introducing them to something new. So
yeah,
yeah,
which is exciting, and I think it'll be appreciated, and then understanding that, you know, the struggle, whether it's, you know, I know you're not going to get into any jazz necessarily, but there's been all these expressions of just despair, or you know, the blues, right? It's all these different things that Black people have. It's really come from this sort of pain, and we've, you know, made this amazing art from it while also expressing ourselves. I just think it's so dope.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that doesn't happen a lot in law school is that, our students learn by reading cases. And so a lot of times they just read the case, but they aren't getting the historical, social context of how, this law or this case came to be decided. And and so, I'm approaching the class, like you just said, like my approach to each class is a read, watch, and listen, because I think
Mm,
you need all three. You can't just look at the song and do a reading. You can't just do a reading. And a lot of these with these movements, it was also physical. There were also, you need to see it. So for me to hear a song about strange fruit and not see lynching, you're doing the art a disservice.
for sure.
And it helps really for someone to put themselves in the context of, when that song was, being performed and what was actually going on,
Yeah, and
in
the
the context
courage it
of
took.
that time, and the courage it took,
Yeah,
for her
there's
to,
yeah,
yeah,
there's so many layers of that, and you know, potentially be, you know, being blackballed, and how far would this song be able to go, depicting the things that it's, you know, that it's depicting.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I can't wait to kind of, you know, once you get everything to, you got some great stuff going on, and I'm looking forward to.
Thank you. I'm really excited. I tweeted about the course, just to tell people about it, last week or a week before last. And like a law professor at another school I know on Twitter, but I've never met, and is also DJs on the side and has offered to like make a mixtape out of the course. And like,
Oh,
so I'm like, I'm so excited. Like the music and the movement. I'm also writing a book of the same title, and now in a class, and I'm gonna have a mixtape, from the course. So I'm like, yeah.
who's gonna uh host a mixtape?
Oh, a mixtape needs a host?
Yeah, like DJ Drama or something.
Oh, why would it? I guess the person who offered to create the mixtape, since he's the DJ, I would give him first dibs. Certainly not me. That would.
I was gonna say, did you want to get in there and?
Oh. No, 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 no. I have a lot of talents, and I know my strengths. I also know where I'm not gonna.
Okay, okay, fair enough, fair enough. I'll say this. I think it's super important work that you're doing,
Thank
and I
you.
I think that I know you're excited because we've talked about it. I know I could see the excitement in your face today, and I think this is going to. I know you have big plan. You know, like I think it's going to impact people and influence more people than you even imagine. And I know that, you know, you're a dreamer, and I know that you have these, you know, you have a number, but I know you want it to make sense and impact people and really affect change. Ultimately, I think it's going to do a ton of that, and I think hopefully you'll be part of the next variation, iteration of a similar course and the actions that you're taking, and the art, this book that you're putting together will do a lot of the same things, helping to put these things in the proper context. So salute to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. I'm hoping for success there.
It's gonna be whatever your definition of success is. I think it's gonna exceed that.
Well,
I really do. Yeah. Food. Can we just talk a little food?
Yes,
Just
we have to
quickly.
talk food.
All right. So we follow each other on social, and yes, you will tweet about all the cool, teaching things that you're doing. But also, probably even more so than that, is your love for food. Tell me about that, and like my wife, she started in the culinary school. She's a huge she's not a foodie per se, but she's definitely has an appreciation, really great cook. But she doesn't have the nerve to post some of the things that she like. To talk about like your love for food and like what made you decide to to share so much of it with all your followers and stuff on social media.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when I was kind of building my Twitter brand and persona, I was mostly thinking about and observing what really got people's attention, right? So I won't say that I was intentional in kind of sharing, other aspects of my life that weren't related to me being a law professor. I wasn't being that intentional about it. But what I noticed was there were a lot more followers and a lot more likes that came with those food pics and came with, some family pics. And ultimately, what I concluded is that while people are interested in the work I do, that's true. They're also just interested in a person. And it was important for me to not disconnect the person I am from the work I do. And so I've been very intentional about that. And I mean, a big part of my life is cooking, baking. And I'll say it's food photography because I think my food pics look good, but I think that's a stretch to call it food photography. But I put a lot of energy into plating and getting that right image of the food that I cook too.
I'm gonna call it food photography. I think
Okay.
there's definitely yeah.
Okay.
What, like, clearly you're proud of the things that you're baking and cooking, but was there ever any apprehension about posting stuff? And then do you still have any apprehension around it?
Not anymore, but I think
Yeah.
initially there was, because I just was kind of like, what are people going to think about, this? But I follow, I found myself an in because I follow, her name's Angela, but she is the Kitchenista on Twitter, and she does Kitchenista Sundays. And so I found a way to do something that made sense. So it wasn't just like me, now I'll just randomly post what I cook on a Tuesday. But at first I wouldn't. I would only play Kitchenista Sundays. And so it was, there was a reason for me to be posting this food picture because I was participating in this kind of Sunday trend. And so that was really, I think that gave me a lot of confidence. And it connected me to like a lot of, other amateur, just home cooks who were, at home and proud of the things that they were making and posting.
I think that, again, we've talked about a couple different ways and a couple different applications, but just being a whole person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're recording this on a Monday, Monday following Easter, right? We were, on Twitter talking about Earth, Wind, and Fire, and the Isley Brothers, right? And just the music, you know, food posts, uh, just social awareness, professional, like you're multifaceted. You're not just one thing. And I just want to say kudos to you for allowing people into your life in multiple ways, because um, the I know the law field can be generally like pretty conservative and pretty, not interested in really showing much else. And you're doing so many things just by showing yourself. I think you're breaking down a lot of barriers for other people. And I just want to say, it's really inspiring, and it inspires me to want to show more of myself and make sure that people are seeing, like, you know every more than just maybe one dimension of myself. So you're inspiring me. I know that you're inspiring others too, so
Thank you.
thank you
Thanks.
for that. Yeah. So we have your article that's going to be posted in the summer, right? You said June.
Yes.
Your course starts in the fall. Is there where can people follow you or kind of learn more about any of the stuff that's upcoming, or just look at your like amazing food photography?
So the best place to follow me is on Twitter, and I am at Prof Allen Tweets, Allen.
Cool, cool. I know we ran a little bit long. Thank you so much for spending the
Yeah,
time.
this
This
is
was
cool.
so good
Yeah,
and like
this is
such a
dope.
great
Good.
conversation. Yeah, I'm always greedy. I'm always like trying to rope people into coming back. I'm not gonna say that. We'll talk about this offline. Thank you for your contribution. Good luck with all your projects that are upcoming. And for everyone that's listening or watching, thank you for checking us out. This has been one of my favorite episodes. So until next time, I just want to say thanks again for checking us out. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And until we meet again, peace.
Thank you.